Well, hello there. Welcome once again to an episode of Just a Few, where I take the opportunity to provide biblical responses to questions from people like you. My name is Patrick Antwine. Again, thank you for joining me. And if you have a question and you'd like me to attempt a response to that question, if it's a biblical type question, please feel free to submit your question via the email address on your screen. That's the best way for me to get around to responding to you. And I'll try to provide you with a response as soon as is possible. Today's question has to do with the Christian rite of water baptism. And the question is it necessary for a backslidden Christian to be baptized again? There are some traditions that practice rebaptism. Down through the centuries, there were people who have done it. My response to a question like this is no, it's not necessary. And that's because we need to understand the purpose or the symbolism and significance of water baptism. Water baptism is the believer's first act of obedience to Jesus Christ, who says to go into all the world and preach the gospel, and whoever believes and is baptized shall be saved. And says, make disciples of all the nations in Matthew, baptizing them and teaching them to follow all that he has said. If you refuse to be baptized, you need to question why, and if you're truly regenerated, why are you ashamed to identify publicly with Christ? Because water baptism provides you that first opportunity to identify openly and publicly and unashamedly with Jesus Christ, the gospel, and the church. And it must be done, of course, by an adult who has accepted Christ, having understood the gospel. Now, the question has to do now with if someone is truly regenerated. I'm assuming the person was truly born again, because that has always been an issue for me, because sometimes we assume a person was regenerated when maybe they weren't when they got baptized. It's possible that the person just wanted to get baptized. So it's a complex issue, and only God sometimes knows if the person is truly regenerated. That led to baptism. But let's assume so. Yes, it's possible that a person could find themselves slipping back into sin and in need of repentance and recommitment. That's possible. So the question arises out of that context. Is water baptism again necessary for such a person? And I would say no. If you're born again, you have already identified with Christ. It's just that you have allowed sin to dominate your life once again, and you have found yourself in need of repentance and in need of restoration to fellowship with God. So I would say it is not necessary, because then every time somebody slips into sin in some form, as we are often prone to do, does it mean that you need to go back and everybody who that happens to needs to go and re-baptize? I think not. I'm always amazed by people who, in some cases it's leaders in the church. They may make a trip to some place like in Israel or Jerusalem and so on. They come back with pictures and some videos boasting that they got rebaptized in Jordan, as if there's some sort of virtue in the water of the Jordan that they didn't acquire when they got baptized in the dirty river here in Trinidad or wherever else. And I wonder, what's the rationale and the biblical support for that? I'm left dumbfounded, and some people say, well, that's where John the Baptist baptized Jesus and so. But where you get baptized has no bearing on your eternal destiny. Baptism and the water that you get baptized in, that doesn't save you and determine if you're going to have a better place in the kingdom or something, because, well, I got baptized in Jordan, or I got baptized in the exact spot John baptized Jesus. That doesn't make any difference. A person can get baptized here and be lost still. So that has always marveled me, why people who have already been baptized make a trip to the promised land and they think it's necessary, and there's something special about getting baptized in Jordan. I don't see that as being necessary. So that's my response to a question like that. I would suggest that the better thing to do, or the more fruitful and beneficial thing for such a person to do if they had been in a backslidden condition, is public confession. If not public, at least before those you may have offended during the time you were backslidden, and a testimony of your rededication to Christ. That's sufficient, because that's what baptism really is. It's a testimony of your identification with Christ and his kingdom, the message of the kingdom. So you can do that without having to be rebaptized by confession of sin to the relevant parties, if it's before a church, before a group of fellow believers, whatever, and then a testimony of what God has done in your life in restoring you to fellowship with him. That's good enough for me. My name is Patrick Antwine. Thank you for the question. May God's blessing be upon one and all until we